Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People.
This is beautiful. It's kind of poetic that it's going the other way this time. Not my story, but a family friend story. I knew this lovely German lady who all call Heidi. Not her real name. She was married to an Israeli man who all call Douche. Douche was a douche for a number of reasons. He worked with my dad in IT, who said he had a hero complex where he would cause disasters at work, then try to be the hero and save the day. We even suspect he caused a huge IT disaster at our national airport while he was working there. He was also really creepy. He creeped on my younger sister, calling her randomly and asking to pick her up. He was the exact opposite of his wife, who was lovely and sweet and charismatic, and I have no idea how they ended up together. Unfortunately, a while after we made friends with them, Heidi got very sick. Her colon stopped working. She almost died. Thankfully, she was in a country with stellar health care, which saved her life. But she found out it was Crohn's disease, and she had to get a colostomy bag. While she was recovering from her surgery, Douche announced he wanted a divorce. His words were, and I quote, "I didn't marry a sick woman." Effing prick. He left her high and dry and very soon was seeing someone else. He lost all the friends he'd made in our country with his awful behavior. My family told him he was no longer welcome near us as we were there for Heidi. He finally fecked off back to Israel. Apparently, he had gotten into quite a bit of debt while in my country and skipped off to avoid paying. Good riddance, we all said. Heidi found her feet eventually. She took up photography and went to university to study it. She did very well for herself and lived a happy life free from Douche. After about a year, he contacted Heidi and she told us about it. Apparently, he was trying to sweet-talk her into going over to Israel to go through with the divorce proceedings. According to Heidi, your marital status is on your identity card in Israel, and it's one of the first things a girl asks to see when you go on a date. When the girl saw he was married on his card, they'd never go for a second date. So every time he'd call her asking when she was coming over, she'd put a huge crap-eating grin on and reply, "Oh, I don't know. I'm not really in a position to fly with my condition and all. Maybe when I get better." She knew full well he wouldn't set foot back in our country because his creditors were still looking for their money back. She would just relish in the knowledge that he was getting rejected by all these women he was pursuing in Israel, while she chilled with us having a great time. Heidi's doing much better now. She went back to Germany, though she still visits my family and her friends from time to time. She's still her awesome self. I don't know what Douche is up to now, but I suspect after all these years, he's still a douche. And our next story. Fire me because I was sick? Have fun making minimum wage. This took place a couple years back, and one of my old coworkers said I should post it here. So this happened during the beginning of my senior year in high school. I was balancing football, school, and work. I worked at a convenience store chain that's only around my region of the country. I had an incompetent store manager. She was lazy, never wanted to do work. All the store associates, including assistant managers, were always stuck cleaning up her mess. She took 2-hour lunches and always thought it was appropriate to leave her shift early. For some reason, and I'll never understand why, she did not like me for whatever reason. A good example was her writing me up for using my cell phone on the floor when it was my mother calling me asking when to pick me up. I didn't have my license when this was going on, or the time she gave me crap for not fully stocking the fridge. Now, she came in early in the morning, and I would usually come in at the end of her shift because I had school and football practice. Then there was a night shift after me. She would come in the morning and see the fridge not fully stocked. This is an example of how much of an idiot she really was and how she should be giving the night shift guys write-ups for that, but no, I was her main target. Now, I'd gotten very sick one weekend and had called in to work so that I couldn't come in that day. None of the managers or assistant managers were in, so the team lead took my message. Looking back at it, I should have blamed him more than my idiot manager. I assume he never told the managers I was out because come the next week I had a football game on Saturday and I usually worked Saturdays, and when I'd gotten that job earlier in the year, I gave her my football schedule so she wouldn't put me on for that day. My boss called me Friday night telling me I needed to come to work Saturday because I missed the previous week, and no call, no show is automatic termination. I told her I did call in, but she didn't believe me. So instead of her telling me I was fired, I said, I quit right there on the phone. So I guess she didn't fire me, but I fired me. I don't know. Anyway, now to the revenge. I already had plans to get her fired or demoted. Either one would have made me happy. Over the course of the month prior to my departure, I'd taken video and pictures of how bad she had that store running. By the time I'd gotten to my shift, I'd taken pictures of filthy floors and bathrooms, flies all around the food assembly area, associates on their phones, even the manager herself playing games or whatever right on the floor. Basically showing how she kept her store a wreck during her shift, and I was left to clean up the rest. I ended up sending all of this all the way up to our regional manager. She was sleeping with our district manager. If I sent it to him, it would have gotten buried. And I got a response back that the situation would be handled accordingly. District manager ended up getting fired due to incompetence, and he was also under fire initially for sexual assault allegations from other store workers, and my store manager was demoted all the way down to a basic store associate. The icing on the cake, a year later after I quit or got fired, I was working at a warehouse and making about $20 an hour. There was another one of the convenience stores right down the road from my building. I ended up going there for lunch only to see my old boss getting reamed out by that store's manager. So, with the knowledge that I was making almost 3 times her hourly wage, store associates only made $8.35, and she was still incompetent at her job, it made me quite happy. And our third story. Take all the credit for my work and tell the boss I'm a terrible employee. Well, it was because of me that you got fired. I used to work in a marketing role in a government department. I was part-time and worked along with a girl who I'll call Karen, who was working on a yearly contract. She'd been there for 2 years and was very friendly with the department manager, and this was the reason her contract kept being renewed. When my manager went on maternity, Karen got temporarily promoted to the management role. This caused a lot of upset in the office as there were a number of more suitable and qualified people who didn't get the chance to act up. As soon as Karen became my manager, everything changed. My workload increased, and as I was part-time, I had to absolutely bust my butt to meet the project deadlines. All of a sudden, I wasn't being included in staff briefs on new projects, yet was expected to work on them. My department manager was acting really off with me too. This went on for months before I finally approached my department manager and asked to discuss my workload, etc. She sat me down and basically told me that I really needed to get my act together, as Karen was having to pick up my workload and it was affecting her output because I was, in Karen's words, so lazy I should be fired. I told the manager what was going on and the actual work I was doing, but she took Karen's side and said I was just assisting with some parts of projects, and it was ridiculous of me to claim I was managing and completing so many projects on my own. So I started making mistakes. Simple things: adding wrong briefs for designers, not including prices, adding incorrect budgets and deadlines that were 2 days out, etc. Karen started to get pulled by various managers asking why she was making so many mistakes. Then I knew for sure she was passing off my work as her own. She called me in for a meeting and exploded. I walked out. She'd begun complaining about me to teammates, saying how lazy I was. My friends began to tell me what was going on. One friend informed me that Karen was online for an average of 5 hours a day planning her upcoming wedding in Spain and was using the office phones to make international calls to the wedding planners. He could see her screen and couldn't believe how lazy she was. So she was planning her wedding while I was busting my butt. So I decided to skip talking to the managers and went straight to HR. I told them to have IT monitor her internet usage and her outgoing calls. I said I could prove that she was a lazy B-word and was relying on me. I was obviously able to show email trails and the project documents I'd completed, and she'd then taken and saved down as her own. 2 weeks later, Karen was called to HR and told her contract was not being renewed, and she was given 1 month notice. She told everyone it was because of budget cuts. My department heads brought me in for meetings to apologize and commended me on my excellent work, and I got a promotion. I left a couple months later. If they'd believed me in the first place, I wouldn't have endured so many months of stress and anxiety. And our last story. I planted over 5,000 dandelion weeds in my neighbor's garden. Here's some backstory. I have a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel named Charlie, and he likes to poop. I let him out in my front garden every morning for his toilet routine, same in the evening. We don't have a boundary fence on where my garden and my neighbor's starts beside a row of bushes. Saying this, Charlie hasn't ever crossed or pooped past these bushes. Now every week I collect up said poop before it gets into a disturbing amount. I've been doing this for the past 4 years to keep my front garden looking good and not too smelly. One day I came home from work to find that my neighbors weren't happy that there was dog poop in my front garden. I instantly went to collect what was there. It wasn't much, and it was nowhere near the boundary of where our gardens meet. Fast forward a week, my neighbor again complained about the dog poop being in my garden. However, this time he threatened to hurt my dog if he continued to poop in my garden. This time I wasn't so nice about it and stated that it's my garden and my dog can do as he pleases. Now I know dog poop can be annoying, but when it's not your garden and there's no smell due to decent airflow and open front garden, is it really justified to threaten a man's dog over some poop? Anyway, after months of this going with petty things and shade being thrown at me every day about having a dog, I decided to declare war on my neighbors. Now, I knew these people pretty well. They just moved in, and we let them use our Wi-Fi for a couple of months until they got theirs all sorted. I picked up a few things about them, and one of them was how OCD they were. They cut back their garden every week and painted the entire bottom layer of the house to match their fence. This was all the fuel I needed to exact my revenge. My first step was to start off small. I knew they liked things to match, so I painted my fence gate bright pink instead of matching it with my fence. This was my first small victory. They hated it so much they begged me to correct the color. So I did. I figured if peace was an option, it was worthwhile. Then began the hate again. I had to come up with something so evil and yet genius that it couldn't be traced back to me. That's when I planted over 5,000 dandelion seeds in their front and back garden. I figured I was in this for the long haul, and I did it under cover of night to make sure to plant them in places not easily mowed. Fast forward 3 months and their garden was covered in weeds. They grew through the slabbing and were patched all over the garden. It took them 3 days to clear the weeds and around 100 pounds of weed killer. As someone who loves dandelion greens and fried flowers as well as dandelion wine, you're welcome to come plant 5,000 seeds in my yard any day. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.